All right, we're going to get started, everyone. Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Nick Soderman. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for UW Transplant Program. And on behalf of our entire transplant team, I'd like to welcome you to this session titled Spring into Health, Making a Nutrition and Exercise Plan for a Healthier You. For this evening session, we have attendees both here in Madison, and then you can see all of our technology over here. We have a webinar audience joining us too. And so for those of you attending via the webinar, you should be able to see the video footage of the kitchen. If not, click on the participants icon on the top right-hand page. That's probably someone not able to connect. Top right of the page, and you should be able to see the video feed. If you have any questions during the presentation or the cooking demonstration, you may type a question in the box on the right-hand side of the screen titled Q&A. For those of you here in person, you have a copy of the presentation in front of you. If you don't, they're off to the back there. There's also a post-session survey. Your feedback is very valuable to us, and we ask that you please complete that before you leave this evening. And for those of you on the webinar, we'll be sending you a post-session survey online after the session. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Cindy Huber, who is the Executive Director of the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin. Cindy couldn't be here tonight. She's actually joining us via the webinar. But Cindy is a valued partner who we collaborate with to provide these educational sessions. And I'd also like to thank Chad Dunning from the American Liver Foundation Upper Midwest, who's in the back of the room here tonight. And we are honored to partner with both of these great organizations with patient education programs to support kidney and liver health and health of all transplant patients. So tonight we have our speakers are Rebecca Walschlager, who is a clinical nutritionist with UW Health. And then we also have Stephanie Brueggemann, who is a UW Health exercise specialist. And between the two of them tonight, they're going to share with you some ways to implement a sustainable nutrition and exercise program to optimize you for transplant, or if you've already received your transplant, keep healthy following transplant. So please welcome Stephanie.
Everybody. Thank you. Hopefully it works again, right?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So I just wanted to introduce myself real quick. I know that Nick already said that, but I work in UW Preventive Cardiology. I've done lots of different jobs over the past almost 20 years. I started out in outpatient cardiac rehab. Then I moved on to doing exercise prescriptions for lots of different populations. I've also worked in doing a pre-diabetes class for the prevention of diabetes with a lot of our wonderful UW dietitians for about 7-8 years. And now I work in inpatient cardiopulmonary rehab. And one of the best parts of my job is I get to work with the heart and lung transplant probably about a week after they get out of transplant and start exercising them right away, which might seem crazy, but really it's very helpful. So, and they do really well. It's a very rewarding part of my job. I am going to talk to you mostly just about the basics of exercise. If you have questions, we'll have time for questions later after Rebecca's done with her talk. So when I go and talk to patients in the hospital, it's usually after surgery or heart attacks or heart or lung transplant, and a lot of people don't feel great. They don't like it when I say I'm from cardiac rehab. Some of them just want to send me out of the room because they don't want to think about exercise. And they're tired, they're exhausted, and I know that's the way a lot of transplant patients feel, both pre and post. They just feel lousy, and the idea of getting on a treadmill or getting on a bike, and it just doesn't seem possible, but it definitely is. And one of the reasons that we really want to get people active and exercising is a lot of times pre-transplant, but this happens post-transplant too, because you're weak from before the transplant, so you're still weak after. Even though you've got new organs, you're still deconditioned from when you were sick before, so we got to gain that back. A lot of people, so if they feel tired, they feel short of breath, so what happens? You don't move as much. And then you get into this vicious cycle where you don't move as much, so you get even more short of breath and more weak and more tired, and then you get even less active. So you got to break that cycle, and one of the ways to break the cycle is through exercise. So why should particularly pre- and post-transplant, and I'm talking kidney, liver, heart, lung. I know heart, lung are the people that I work with mostly, but through all the reviews on exercise and pre- and post-transplant, on the research, every single, so pre- and post, kidney, liver, heart, lung, shows that if people exercise regularly, they have a better quality of life and they improve their fitness level. So better quality of life, what does that mean? It means people, they feel better. They feel better physically, but not only physically, they feel better emotionally, they feel better mentally. If people exercise, they get an improved fitness level. I'm sure that's obvious, but what does that lead to? Think about all the things that you like to do or that you need to do. So things, when you're more fit, things like doing the laundry or getting dinner ready or vacuuming or climbing up a flight of stairs, those things are easier if you're more fit. But also think about the things that you enjoy. So things like taking vacation with your family. And if you are more fit, you feel better, you're able to do things that you enjoy more with your family, with your friends, you're able to sleep better. That pretty much is across the board the two things that they find with research on exercise and pre- and post-transplant patients. Of course, there's other benefits too, like increased muscle mass, increased muscle strength, your muscles function better, people get better sleep. There's been evidence that people are less depressed, they're less anxious, they are decreasing their risk of cardiovascular disease. So when you get a transplant, unfortunately, one of those things that can happen with the medications is you're going to be at higher risk of developing heart disease. And through exercise, you're decreasing your risk of that by lowering your cholesterol, lowering your blood pressure, lowering your blood sugar. The studies in the pre- and post-transplant world, unfortunately, there's still not enough of them, but the initial research shows that there are these benefits. It just needs to be investigated a little bit more. So, basic guidelines. I know 150 minutes a week might sound a little daunting. This is your ultimate goal. I'm not saying this is where you start. So 150 minutes a week, most days of the week, 5 to 7. Although 3 to 4 is okay, but it's probably a little bit better to spread it out over 5 to 7. You want your exercise to be moderate. So you don't need to, I always think the biggest loser, I guess that's probably old news now, but you're not going to have somebody yelling and screaming at you and making you go at full force. When you look at the research and where the benefits come from, moderate intensity exercise gets those benefits. What type of exercise is aerobic exercise? So this is something that I had an argument with my own mother on the other day. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, I'm trying to convince her that she needs to take some exercise classes while she's in Florida. And she told me, I'm doing bocce ball, and I'm very active, and I'm cleaning the house all day, Steffi, and I said, Ma, unless you roll that bocce ball and jump up and down for 10 minutes, it's not counted as exercise. It counts. I mean, it counts as far as you're active, you're burning calories, but when you're talking about the benefits, the increased quality of life, the increased fitness, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, and your blood pressure getting better, it's that continuous for 10 minutes activity. Now, it doesn't have to be anything formal. It doesn't have to be on a treadmill or a stationary bike. It could be dancing in your living room. As long as it's 10 minutes continuously, it counts as exercise, as aerobic exercise. So when people think of aerobic exercise, this is a lot what they think of. They think of athletes. They think of running on treadmills, spin class, doing something really hard. But as I was just mentioning, aerobic exercise is anything that makes you breathe a little bit heavier and it lasts 10 continuous minutes. So walking is one of the obvious ones. We don't live in the nicest place to walk outside all year, but you can do it not only outside, but in your house, if you live in an apartment or a condo, going up and down hallways, of course, walking at the mall. The pool, it's a little bit tougher. People don't like to commit to pool a lot just because it takes more work to get there and change, but I think it's definitely worth it if you have joint discomfort, back pain, leg pain, knee pain, hip pain. Pool is really a great place to get your exercise. Biking, of course, and either inside or outside. One of the reasons I have the chair aerobics class picture in there is because it's something I recommend often to patients in the hospital that have back, knee, hip problems, and they can't get to a pool, or they live out in the middle of nowhere and they can't, there's nothing there for them to exercise at. They can't get to a place where they have equipment. You can just sit in a chair and march your feet. As long as it makes you breathe heavier for 10 minutes at a time, it's good exercise. So the talk test, I wanted to give you a little bit more of an idea of what moderate is. The talk test is something that we use a lot in cardiac rehab because a lot of people take medication that affects their heart rate, and that magic, you need to be at 65 to 85% of your estimated maximum heart rate, which is 220 minus your age. Well, a lot of our patients could work as hard as they could and they wouldn't even touch the 65%. So we use the talk test instead. So you want to, if you're exercising with somebody next to you, you should be able to have a conversation with them, but it's a little tough to talk. So every 3 to 4 words, you have to take a breath in. If you're huffing and puffing so much and you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to let this other person talk to me and I'm just going to concentrate on my exercise, it means you're pushing yourself too hard. You want to slow it down. On the other end of it, if you can easily sing a song, you're not working hard enough and you should pick up the pace. It's just an easy way to figure out when you're out for a walk and you don't have a heart rate monitor if you're working at a good level or not. So how do you get started? I have patients in the hospital that have never exercised a day in their life, or they've been really sick for months or even years, and the idea of getting up and taking a walk is really difficult. So we just start with 1 minute, even 30 seconds if they can't do a minute. And a lot of times I have them do the marching while sitting in a chair, either just using their legs or their arms as well, and do 1 minute. And then 3 times a day they do that. The ultimate goal at minimum is 10 minutes 3 times a day. And if you did 10 minutes 15 times a week, that's where you're going to get the benefits that I'm talking about that the research shows as far as improved quality of life, fitness level. You know, more ideally, yes, you want to do 30 minutes in a row, but the results when it comes to research in healthier populations, when you look at 10 minutes 3 times a day versus 30 minutes at once, you get the same results. Whoops, I think I just turned my thing off. There we go. Over. If you want to do more, so let's say 10 minutes 3 times a day, that doesn't challenge you, you'd rather do something a little bit more. You can easily take a walk for 20 minutes and you feel fine. Then you might want to start doing something a little more formal, like what you would normally think of as exercise. So starting with doing something, I said 3 days a week on here, you could do 1 or 2 days a week, whatever goal is reasonable for you. And you want to start always with a warm-up. And when I say warm-up, I don't mean stretching. I mean walking slow, biking slow, dancing slow, whatever you're doing for your exercise. The purpose of it is it warms up your muscles. It opens up the arteries in your arms, in your legs, in your heart. So when you pick up the pace, you can deliver blood better to those areas that are going to need it when you're exercising. 5 minutes is generally okay with some of the research that I looked at on pre- and post-transplant. They said 10 minutes might be better. I use that for if people have chest pain. 10 minutes is a much better time for warm-up. Then you want to increase that moderate intensity for a talk test. Again, I put 15 to 20 minutes on there. You could start with 5 to 10 if you want to. And then at the end, you want to cool down because you want to bring your heart rate and your blood pressure down slowly, especially if you're on medication. If you stop suddenly and you're doing moderate intensity, you might get dizzy, you might get lightheaded. So we just want to slow it down for about 5 to 10 minutes at the end. The goal is 150 minutes a week, though. So every day or every other day or every week when you feel like, okay, 15 to 20 minutes moderate is, I can do this, then you add a minute. And you gradually add a minute or two until you get up to a minimum of 30 minutes. So that 150 minutes a week, unfortunately, does not include that warm-up and cool-down. Yes, it's not fair, but and then you want to get to the 150 minutes a week, so now you're at 3 days a week, 30 minutes, so now you're going to increase the number of days that you're going to do it. So a week later, you're going to increase to 4 days a week. Once 4 days a week is easy, then you increase to 5. Pedometers. I wanted to bring this up. It's not, there's not research, unfortunately, on the whole 10,000 steps things in pre and post transplant, but I think it is a good way that if you're not ready for formal exercise, it might be a way to get you moving more. And since I gave this talk 5 years ago, technology has drastically changed, or at least in my world. The one in the bottom left-hand corner is just a regular old school pedometer. They still work. They're not fancy, but they're definitely cheaper than a Fitbit or an iPhone or an Android. But and you can get one for about $20. The brand I have on there is Omron. I really like that brand. It's just, it's been shown to be very accurate. They make a lot of different pieces of equipment too, like blood pressure cuffs and that sort of thing. So I do like that brand the best. Fitbits are great. I feel like everybody has one. I'm an exercise physiologist. I don't have one. But if you want that kind of tool and you want to communicate with your computer and stuff, that's fine, but I find it pretty expensive. Phones, a lot of people have smartphones, so I think if you haven't explored the Health app, either if you have an iPhone or an Android, they have those there, that'll count your steps. So how do you get started? You wear it for a week. Every day, you look at how many steps you got at the end of the day and you write it down. And then at the end of the week, you average how many steps you take per day. And then your goal is going to be, next week I'm going to do more steps. To be specific, say next week I'm going to do 500 more steps a day. And then just try and gradually build up to the 10,000 steps. 10,000 steps, though, is just, it's a good way to get more active, but the ultimate goal is still going to be that 150 minutes a week. Now, if you don't get to the 150 minutes a week, but you get to 10,000 steps, you're still going to get benefits. So, you know, I tell people all the time, something is better than nothing. So just whatever you can do. Even if you don't get to 10,000 steps and you used to do 1,000 steps, but now you're doing 5,000, that's still good. Strength training. So I wanted to bring up strength training because the research that is in the pre- and post-transplant world, they're either just on aerobic exercise, but some of the studies did include a strength training component to it. I think it's an important part of an exercise program, as well as stretching, but I didn't bring that. I'm not going to talk about that today. Strength training, though, I do want you to be careful. I mean, no matter what kind of exercise, always talk to your doctor about exercise before you're going to start it, especially the strength training. So why should you lift weights? The benefits that I have here are the results of lifting weights. This is the information done with healthier populations, but it's also done with like cardiovascular disease, diabetes. Again, unfortunately, the research in pre and post-transplant isn't huge, but the stuff is what the research did find out in pre and post-transplant is that you can increase your muscle mass, you can increase your muscle strength, and you can increase how well your muscles function. And that's a big deal, especially in pre-transplant. You can lose a lot of muscle mass because you're not moving as much and because of the disease state. So I do think it's a worthwhile thing to explore and doing some strength training in addition to some aerobic exercise. But as far as in like cardiovascular disease and diabetes in the studies, not only do they improve their muscle mass and their muscle strength, they get stronger bones, their blood sugar control is better. That's a big one that surprised me when I first found out about this, is when diabetics, let's say there's a diabetic they're exercising, they're the perfect weights, they eat healthy. I've had patients that they add strength training, their blood sugar gets better because your muscles learn to use blood sugar more efficiently. Decreased risk of falls, I also think that's a very big deal because falling is not a good thing, and you don't want to add to with broken bones. It's a problem. So I think decreased risk of falls is definitely beneficial. So the basics of weight training, it doesn't take a lot of time. 2 to 3 days. We prefer you not work the same muscle group 2 days in a row. You want to pick about 8 to 10 exercises hitting each major muscle group. So a lot of people tell me, no, I don't need to do strength training for my legs because I bike. But it's not quite the same thing. Biking is working on endurance, where lifting weights is working on strength. So it's two different things. So you want to do something for your legs, for your abdominals, for your lower back, your upper back, your arms, your chest. So you're hitting, that's why the 8 to 10 exercises. You could probably get away with 4, but the 8 to 10 is better. You want to do 1 set of 10 to 15 repetitions. You're going to pick a weight that you can lift for 10 to 15 repetitions, and after the 15th repetition you feel tired, your muscles are fatigued. If your muscles aren't fatigued, you want to go to a higher weight. This, again, I would want you to talk to your doctor about before you do some kind of strength training. For some people, you might just want to do the exercises without even any weights at all, or even 1 or 2 pound weights. Importance of strength, yes?
Yeah, I know you're supposed to not do consecutive, like you're supposed to separate like upper and lower body when you're doing strength.
Yeah.
But what about like abdominals if you're trying to strengthen your core? Can you do that consecutively or no with that?
I would say yes. From what I've learned, you can do that consecutively because your stomach muscles are something that you use every day to keep yourself upright, so it's a good question. You want to go slow. So I have people who do this. They just want to get it over with. But you want to lift your weight, take about 2 seconds to lift it, and 2 seconds to bring it back down. You want to breathe. People laugh when I tell them this, but think about it. When you go lift a heavy box, you hold your breath, bring the box over, and then put it down, and then you breathe. But when you don't breathe when you're lifting weights, your blood pressure can go really high. That's not good, so we want to avoid high blood pressure, so you want to make sure that you breathe when you're lifting. Generally, it's when you lift the weight, you exhale, and when you bring it back down, you inhale. But the most important thing is that you breathe. And then you don't want to lock your joints, meaning that you bring it down where my arm is almost straight, but it's not locked. Types of strength training. So resistance bands, anybody who's done physical therapy, I'm sure is familiar with the very brightly colored different rubber bands. I think they're great pieces of equipment. You can take them anywhere. They don't take up much room. You can do strength training in the pool. And then, of course, things like dumbbells and exercise equipment. But really, the resistance bands is one of the easier things to have around the house. So keeping you safe, I know I've already said this, you just want to make sure that you talk to your doctor before you start any kind of exercise program. If it hurts, don't do it. We use this in cardiac rehab all the time. I'm not a physical therapist. I don't know anything about muscles and joints. I mean, when I learned it 20 years ago, I did, but that's not my area of expertise. If somebody's doing the treadmill and their back is killing them, I'm not going to have them do the treadmill. People think no pain, no gain. That's not what we do in cardiac rehab, and it shouldn't be anything that anybody else does. You don't want to push through the pain. You want to pick something that doesn't hurt you and that you enjoy doing. As you want to avoid injury, warm up I already talked about. Trying to do something that's not high impact, especially if you have lower bone mineral density, you want to be careful with that. Starting at a lower intensity. So if you're not quite ready for moderate, you're just starting out, just take a slow walk for a minute, for 5 minutes, and then gradually build up to moderate intensity when you're ready for it. Not exercising after a large meal. The reason for that is when you eat, your blood goes to your digestive system to help your body digest the food. When you exercise, where the blood needs to be is in your limbs and to your heart. So if you eat a Thanksgiving dinner and then go for a run, that's not an ideal thing because you're not going to have enough energy in your limbs and your heart to do what you need to do. General rule, unfortunately, we experience this too much here. Don't exercise outside when it's below 0 and when it's above 85, so with the heat index or with the wind chill. You rather should be exercising inside during those days. When should you stop exercising? So the no pain, no gain thing, again, I don't want you to ever think that with exercise. If you don't feel good when you're exercising, don't push through it. If you get unusually short of breath, I know you're going to breathe heavier when you're exercising, but if you're thinking, oh man, this is just, I'm breathing so much heavier than I was yesterday, or I'm so much more exhausted, or you feel lousy, chest discomfort, anything between your navel and your nose. I have talked to maybe 3 people in my career that caused chest pain. It's a discomfort, it's a squeezing, it's an ache, it's a weird feeling, just anything between your navel and your nose when you're exercising. You stop doing what you're doing right away, and you let the sensation pass. If it lasts more than 5–10 minutes and you feel it's an emergency, it's really a 911 call. Not a call the neighbor and have them drive you to the emergency room. Make sure you call 911, but hopefully that will never happen to you. Restrictions, so not only getting your doctor's permission, but talking to your doctor about, do I have any specific restrictions because of my health? And that might be lifting restrictions or what, not types of exercise you shouldn't be doing. If you have a fever, if your medication changes. In particular, I think of if somebody gets a huge increase in a medication that affects their blood pressure, you just want to make sure that you're feeling okay and you're not having any side effects and you're not lightheaded or dizzy when you're doing the exercise. Change in physical condition, you've just been in the hospital, you've just been ill, eating too much, we already talked about. And I mentioned this too, if your joint pain or muscle pain, if it gets worse with a certain kind of activity, that's not something that you want to do. Change in dialysis schedule. So exercise and dialysis, for those of you who have been on or are on dialysis, it's tough exercising after dialysis. Your blood pressure can get really low, you don't feel great after dialysis, so exercising after dialysis is not the greatest time. Most of the patients that I talk to either do it before dialysis on the same day, or they do it on the opposite days of their dialysis. Where can you exercise? Cardiac and pulmonary rehab programs. Sorry to just specify the heart and the lung folks, but most cardiac rehab, pulmonary rehab programs around the state, in Illinois, around the country, have programs that you can pay for that are about the cost of a fitness center. Now, granted, it's not as you don't get to go whenever you want to, but you do have exercise experts there. So that is something, if you want somebody to help you, that might be something to look into. See if your local cardiac or pulmonary rehab program has some kind of wellness program or well-being. A majority of the people there are going to be cardiac patients, but that's our job, is to help people with exercise prescriptions with any kind of health problems. Fitness centers, of course, they're everywhere. Anytime Fitness, Princeton Express, they're everywhere. I do warn you about just be careful when you're first starting exercise. I'd rather you make sure that somebody's there. That's the thing I don't like about the Anytime Fitness and the Princeton Club Expresses, is sometimes nobody's there when you're exercising, so just make sure that somebody's on staff. Trainers, there are lots and lots of great trainers out there. A lot of my coworkers have been trainers over the years, but be careful too. If you decide to start working with a trainer, make sure they know your health history. And trainers, they are known to push people. If a trainer tells you to do something that you're not comfortable with, you're getting chest discomfort. When the trainer is having you run up 3 flights of stairs, you trust yourself and not do that. Senior centers and community centers are great places. They usually have a lot cheaper exercise programs. They might have exercise classes. They might have even a small fitness center. That's always a good place to look. Exercise classes I love because it's a social thing. It's one of the reasons that cardiac and pulmonary rehabs work so well, because it's not only exercise, it's you're with other people, and that social support people give you, it helps you stick to your exercise program. If you don't show up for class, somebody's going to say, hey, where were you the other day? And it increases your adherence to exercise if you get involved with an exercise class. Silver sneakers for those who have Medicare or Medicare Advantage plan or Medicare replacement plan. If you don't know about this, call your insurance company and find out if they support silver sneakers, because they will either give you a membership to a fitness center for free or exercise classes for free. So that's a great benefit of that. And then, of course, you can exercise at home or outside. At home, not only, I like the dancing in the living room idea, but I think I've only had one person in 20 years take me up on that one. DVDs, just stepping in a chair, or stepping while you're sitting in a chair, or just stepping in place, those things can be done as easily at home. But besides the cardiac and pulmonary rehab, physical therapy, they can definitely help you with strength training and aerobic exercise, talking to your transplant coordinators, talking to your doctors. How do you get motivated? Yeah, that's the tough part. It is really the toughest part. Ask yourself why you're doing it. When you ask somebody why you want to exercise, well, I want to be healthier, I want to feel better, but think of the results of those things. Like, when you feel better, what are you going to be able to do? I had a friend and a transplant patient who wanted to always go over to Europe, and he did that. He trained with exercise, and he went over there for 3 months and had a great time. So that was his goal. That was his why. Playing with your grandkids, your kids, or going on a hike with your friends. I mean, try to be specific. Try to make it important to you. Setting goals, we'll talk about how to set goals, but setting small goals each week to try and achieve. Rewarding yourself, nobody ever does this, but I think it's important. What are you going to do for yourself if you meet those goals? I'm not saying buy yourself a new diamond ring, but, you know, like small stuff. Go out and get a book from Goodwill or St. Vinny's, or buy yourself some flowers, or give yourself some time to take a soak in the tub, or watch that movie you've been meaning to watch on Netflix. Entertain yourself. In the world of technology, we've got lots of ways to entertain ourselves. I like to listen to podcasts, watching Netflix or Hulu, or having a TV in front of your exercise equipment, exercising with friends, making it more entertaining. Exercise log, just as with food logs, which have been shown to help people stick to their nutrition goals. Same thing with exercise. Research has shown if you keep track of your exercise and all those gadgets you have on your phone, you can easily do that on there. Or just write it down on a piece of paper. You don't have to get fancy. That helps you stick to your goals. Stick it up on your refrigerator and see what you've done. Mark it on your calendar. Joining a class, again, I think is good. Signing up for some kind of event. And here in Madison, we have tons of walks. I swear, in the summer, in the spring, and in the fall, we have a walk going on every week for something. Transplant games are one of those great things to train for, too. Okay, last slide, I think. Goals. How do you set goals? I don't know if has anybody heard of SMART goals before? No, oh good, it's new information. Oh yes, good. Yeah. So if I ask somebody, what do you want to, what kind of exercise goals do you have? Well, I want to walk more. So when I ask you if you walk more, and yeah, the answer could be yes, you could have walked 2 minutes more than last week. So when you set a goal, make sure it's specific and measurable, meaning I'm going to walk 3 days this week for 15 minutes. And so I know at the end of the week, did I walk 3 days a week, 15 minutes? And then I know I've met that goal. Achievable, realistic, kind of the same thing. You're just starting exercise. Don't say, I'm going to walk 60 minutes, 7 days a week. You got to be realistic, and if it's only 1 day for 10 minutes, that's fine. You'll get there. You've got plenty of time to get there, but you can just start with 1 day for 10 minutes. And then time, it's just, you're going to do that goal is, you're going to set that goal for a week or for a month. I think. My dad loves smiley faces, so I had to put that in there. He was a very positive thinking man, so you can do it. It just starts with one step. All right, that's it.
Dietitian with the Transplant program. I see a lot of familiar faces. I work with anyone who's had a kidney transplant, liver, pancreas, heart, lung. We work with donors as well, so if anyone's had a living donor transplant, I likely worked with your donor as well. And so nutrition is really similar in a lot of ways amongst all the different programs. And in some ways it can be a little different, but something that's really important about nutrition both before and after transplant goes really nicely with the exercise piece. It's really keeping your heart healthy. I've heard a lot of our surgeons and doctors say that organs are more likely to fail due to heart disease, if anything, because if you think of all the arteries and veins going to your organs, your heart's pumping blood through those, so you need a good, strong, healthy heart. So things that we think of when we're giving nutrition advice with transplant are, what are some of these effects that transplant has on your nutrition and on your body? And a big one is bone health. And so Stephanie touched on how exercise can really help keep your bones strong. The transplant medications actually leach minerals out of your bones and can weaken your bones. And so that's why we recommend taking vitamin D and calcium. Usually there aren't diet restrictions after transplant, so you can also increase your intake of calcium and D foods like dairy products. Those are usually restricted before transplant for some patients, not all. The exercise piece. When you're exercising, you're pounding on your bones and you actually break them down, which you would think makes them weaker, but then they repair themselves and they become stronger through exercise. And so walking, strength training, it's all really good to keep those bones strong to counteract those medications. Heart health, so we just kind of briefly touched on that. Like Stephanie said, these medications can raise blood pressure, they can raise cholesterol, so it's really important to not only exercise to keep those under control, but eat a low-sodium diet or watch how much fat you're taking in so you can keep your cholesterol in check. And then blood sugar control. So not everyone has diabetes when they're transplanted, but diabetes is actually a side effect of transplant for several different reasons, and not everyone gets it, but steroids increase blood sugars. The stress of having the transplant on your body, that creates kind of this acute raise in your blood sugars right after transplant. You have to be on bed rest. That kind of creates these higher blood sugar levels. But really, another transplant medication that most patients have to take makes it harder for your body to use its natural insulin or even the insulin you're injecting if you are a diabetic. So all of that kind of compounds and creates higher blood sugar levels. Some bodies are completely able to take care of it and don't need medication. Some people end up needing insulin, maybe just in the hospital while they're still there after their transplant, maybe for the first month or so after transplant, some people forever. But what I tell patients when they're coming before their transplant is I tell them this is a side effect that could occur, and within that first month after transplant, be careful and mindful of how much sugar you're eating or how many carbohydrates you're eating while your body's trying to deal with all these stressors and the medications are at their highest. As they taper the transplant medications down, blood sugar levels usually go down. But usually in those first few weeks, it's a good idea to get moving and then being careful of what you're eating. So Stephanie already touched on why exercise is so important. Nutrition really goes right along with that. Some people really struggle with weight management after transplant. You don't have as many diet restrictions anymore, so your diet opens up and you can have all those favorite foods you've been missing. You're healing and taking it easy so you're not as active. Your body feels well again, and so it's really easy for your body to hold weight afterwards. It's worried that you may be sick again someday, and so it wants you to have those reserves. And so you do have to work a little bit harder to fight weight management afterwards. And so we're going to come up with some strategies of how nutrition can help fight those effects. Muscle preservation. Eating well and moving keeps your muscles put. Muscles protect your bones. Muscles are balanced. So Stephanie already alluded that, we have to prevent falls by staying stronger with weight training. And so if we're not eating well, we're not eating enough, you can lose muscle. If you're not moving enough, you can lose muscle. And then the other one on here I have is back to those blood sugars and keeping those controlled with diet and exercise. Who here has heard of the DASH diet? So DASH diet stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So a lot of times patients will need a low sodium diet before and after transplant. So this diet was developed to help control blood pressure. It's a low-salt diet. It's plant-based, and there's a little bit of a difference between plant-based and vegetarian. They're not the same, but it's really high in plants, whole grains, fruits, vegetables. It's low in fat, and it's low in processed, like sugars and salts and things like that. So that's the DASH meal plan, is just how many servings per day it ends up being of certain foods. And you'll notice in bold I have on there, some foods aren't even eaten daily on the DASH diet. So nuts, seeds, beans, that's a weekly goal. And then sweets, trying to keep it to not every day. So strategies for eating well, this is true of before and after transplant, is we really should be eating less than we're moving. And so calories in cannot be more than we're expending, otherwise it causes us to gain weight. And usually it ends up creating higher cholesterol levels, higher blood sugar levels, higher blood pressure. And so it's not even just related to weight control, it really affects other aspects of our health as well. We use something called the USDA MyPlate, and I have a visual in the next slide of how to balance meals and create more of that plant-based diet, not vegetarian. We use meal plans. There's apps to help you do that. If you have kidney disease, the Kidney Foundation has a good meal planning and feature with their app. The USDA has a good one. There's some really good companies out there that put out good recipes and meal plans like Eating Well and Cooking Light that just really keep the salt, the fat content in mind when they're creating these recipes. I always say meal prep or menu plan. So instead of waiting until you're on your way home from work or until you're ready to eat and your tummy's rumbling and going to look in the fridge, is have a plan. We are way more likely to eat well if there's a plan and we're prepared. And so it doesn't have to be any specific day of the week. I personally pick Saturdays or Sundays since I work during the week. And so I'll take Saturday or Sunday and I'll think of what I want to make during the week. I try to kind of base it off what we have going on. And then I go by the ingredients. I create a grocery list based on the meals we're going to have. And then I come home and I actually chop up the fruits and vegetables that I'm going to have for my snacks and put them into little baggies. I'll chop up some veggies that are going to be in our dinner meal. That way when I get home and I'm hungry, which I usually am, I've already done the prep work. And so I just keep it in a Tupperware, and then all I have to do is either put it in a pan and roast it in the oven, or in the morning when I'm rushing to get out the door for work, if it's already cut up, I can put it in my crock pot and it's ready to go for the day. So I do recommend menu planning, thinking about what you're going to have that week. The more we cook at home, the more we control what goes in our bodies, and so we're usually eating less salt and less fat at home than if we were going out to eat a lot. Get a buddy, and so it's nice to share your plan, to have some accountability. It could be someone living in the same home as you, it could be a friend, but just making sure that someone else verbalizing your plan and having a buddy. My sister comes over with her groceries and we meal prep together, or we'll go grocery shopping together, come back, cut up our stuff together and chat, and then, go on our separate ways. So it's really nice to have that accountability. And then just like Stephanie said, tracking is really helpful. That's all over the literature. Tracking on its own increases someone's likelihood of following through with their plan. So if you have a plan to eat more vegetables and you're making these specific meal plans, tracking, either writing it down like Stephanie said, or they have many apps which we'll go over for tracking your intake. So this is that plate method I was referring to. Long ago, they used to use the food pyramid. Who remembers the food pyramid? We don't use the food pyramid anymore. We have the plate method now, which I personally prefer, versus the pyramid that just tells you how many servings you need for the day. Do I eat 6 to 11 servings of grains in one, or so this to me helps you, see how you can balance your meals, so that if you're eating 3 balanced meals, by the end of the day, this is the pyramid with how many servings of fruits and vegetables and grains you should get in, and lean protein and dairy. It's just, it's more visually appealing to have this icon of how you can balance your meals. So if you're balancing your meals, we usually say aim for at least 2 or 3 food groups at a meal. If you get more in there, more power to you, but try to avoid just having one food group per sitting. So for example, someone might say, oh, I'm doing a high protein diet, I'm just gonna have some chicken and just have chicken breast. Or someone might make some pasta for dinner, and you really wanna try to get that variety in so it's easier to get through the pyramid of how many servings of fruits and vegetables and grains and protein you need. There are some rules or recommendations within each category. So for example, we do recommend making dairy low fat. All dairy, or I should say, true dairy, has the same amount of protein per serving. The only thing that changes is the calories and the fat content. So we do recommend either like a skim or 1% over the whole milk or 2%. With the grains group, we recommend making at least half of your choices whole grain. If you make all of your choices whole grain, that's even better. So whole grains are higher in fiber, higher in protein. They haven't been as processed yet. So for example, with wheat, they don't take the bran off. With, corn, things like that. It's a whole grain. They're not refining it to make it thin and more palatable. Like white bread, for example, they've taken the bran out so that it's nice and fluffy and light. Whereas the wheat breads or the whole grain breads are more dense. They have flecks, of seeds and maybe oats and other things in there. And so some other whole grains would be like oatmeal, brown rice, wheat pasta, the wheat bread, the corn tortillas instead of the flour. So trying to get more of these whole grains instead of the refined ones. What else do I have on there? And then with the protein group, trying to take lean proteins or even plant-based proteins. And so at least a couple days a week, it's not a bad idea to have a protein source come from beans or lentils or nuts. Meat is something that raises blood pressure, cholesterol. It's hard to digest. So it's nice to kind of give your system a rest and not eat meat at every meal. But when you do eat it, it's recommended to trim off the fat or take the skin off, and that's removing some fat and calories from your protein as well. There's really no rules with the fruits and vegetables. The goal here is 3 to 5 servings of each per day. So we separate the groups, fruits and vegetables. So we're talking 6 to 10 times a day having fruits and vegetables. The serving sizes are half cups, so if you had a big salad, you're likely getting 2 4 servings in right there, if not more. So since it is tricky to get that many fruits and vegetables with just meals, it's a great idea to have them as snacks to help meet your goal. And if you're snacking on fruits and vegetables, you're not snacking on the higher calorie stuff that makes it harder to control weight and blood pressure and cholesterol, like chips or crackers or pretzels, cookies, stuff like that. And the rule of including more than one food group also applies to snack time. So trying not to just have the fruit or the vegetable, but maybe some almonds with your blueberries or some hummus with your carrots, or string cheese with your tomatoes, or peaches and cottage cheese. So kind of balancing snack time to get in as many food groups as possible. There is a slide here. So dialysis patients, and even actually post-transplant, this applies too, is potassium. So patients whose kidneys don't work as well, sometimes have to watch how much potassium they're eating. But even people with healthy kidneys have high potassium. Sometimes the water pills they put you on will create high potassium levels. Diabetics, if the blood sugars get out of control, it can cause high potassium levels. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might need to limit potassium, but it's a really common side effect of transplant. I feel like the first few weeks as drug levels are changing and things are evening out, potassium can stay on the higher side. And so I just mentioned that with the fruit and vegetable group, these are some of the low potassium options, if you do have to watch that. So Stephanie covered some apps for tracking exercise. A lot of the same apps that will track your exercise will track your nutrition. So one that I really like that's free and easy to use is called MyFitnessPal. Does anyone here already use MyFitnessPal? Yeah, it's pretty user-friendly.
Very.
Yeah. So essentially you enter your current weight, you enter a goal weight, you enter your activity level, whether you're sedentary, you have low activity level like walking, whether you have more moderate like maybe jogging or bicycling, or if you have high intensity or high level like playing a sport, some soccer, basketball, something like that, or running. Then it tells you, based on all that information, about how many calories per day you should be eating. Then, each time you eat, you enter what you ate, and it has this huge database to choose from, and you can save favorites if you tend to eat similar things all the time. You can save it. So then as you're eating throughout the day, it does the math for you, so then when you get home for the evening meal, you kind of know, hey, let me pull up and see if I've got a lot of calories and I can really have a nice big meal, or if I need to go light. And then anytime you exercise, you enter that and it gives you more calories back. So if you go for a 30-minute walk, you get more calories back. So it's a really nice, easy, user-friendly app. And it syncs if you wear a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something like that. You don't actually even have to enter in your exercise. It syncs to it. And I think your smartphone, if you have your step counter on your phone, it syncs to that as well. So other ones are Lose It, Spark People, same concept, nutrition and exercise goes into that. The kidney disease ones actually give you recipes as well and go over nutrient analysis, like how much phosphorus and sodium and potassium are in things. So this plate kind of comes back full circle is after transplant, the nutrition recommendations are really eat a balanced diet so that your cholesterol is controlled, your blood pressure is controlled, your blood sugar is controlled, and your weight's controlled. Because if half of your meals are usually fruits or vegetables, it's really a low-calorie chunk of food, then you're getting your calories from grains and protein. And it's much easier to control our health and our weight by balancing that. So the other recommendations are taking that vitamin D and calcium we talked about along with a multivitamin. That's to keep your bones strong. It's also recommended to avoid certain foods related to food safety concerns. Have to stay away from grapefruit and pomegranate because of the interactions with the transplant medications. It says moderate potassium on there. Just some people get so excited to get rid of that potassium restriction with transplant, and then for some reason their water pills keep their potassium level on the higher end of normal, so you have to be a little bit careful. All of this is individualized, which is really nice. So if you've had a transplant and you're going, they never told me that, you probably had great potassium or your blood pressure was probably great. So a lot of this isn't, you know, cookie cutter, it's really individualized. So in summary, transplant affects more than just that organ that you're receiving. It affects blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugars, our weight, and so it's really important to take care of ourselves afterwards by exercising regularly, eating this healthy, balanced diet, and taking the vitamins and minerals that are recommended. So.
Question.
Yes, please.
What about going out to dinner?
Yes.
Leave her at home or?
Yes, never leave your house. This plate is perfect for eating out. So if you are looking at the menu and you're going, all right, I'm deciding between the mac and cheese or this chicken sandwich. How many food groups are in the mac and cheese? How many food groups are in the chicken sandwich? So trying to create this balanced meal even when you're out, trying to pick something from the menu that has a vegetable, a grain, a protein, not just a carb. Yeah.
With MyFitnessPal,
Yeah.
you know, if you take the time when you're sitting in a restaurant and looking at the menu, type it in on search, it'll tell you how many calories is there. And if it's like Culver's, it'll tell you Culver's. If it's McDonald's, it'll tell you, McDonald's. It'll tell you each and every place. I mean, Aldi, Aldi, it tells you, food groups there.
It's really.
It's very, knowledgeable.
Exactly.
There's a lot of restaurants.
A lot of restaurants, even like non-chain restaurants are sometimes in there. So the goal with eating out is really creating the balance. And so if your meal already has let's say you order a chicken sandwich and then it comes with fries, well, your bun is already the carb group. The chicken is the protein. So maybe instead of fries, ask to sub out a salad or a steamed vegetable or something so that you're just creating more of that balance. Trying to stay away from really rich sauces that have a lot of fat and salt, like mac and cheese or gravies or Alfredos, those types of things, and trying to go for the lighter ones like a red sauce or a pesto, something like that is helpful.
So it's okay if we sit across from her and eat it then?
Yeah. She should create the balance. Yeah. So many restaurants will accommodate too, like if you say, let's say you order a steak and broccoli and potato. If you say, go light on the seasoning or can you, skip the seasoning on mine, that'll make it way lower in salt than previously it would have if you don't say anything. Same with, French fries or anything like that. Don't be shy. You can say, I don't do a lot of salt. Do you mind leaving the salt off? And then if you want to sprinkle a little on your own, you can control that level. Yeah, dining out is tricky, but this plate really helps because it can work at even fast food restaurants. It can really work anywhere. Subway is really, sub places are really easy to build this because you can put as many vegetables on as possible. You have the grains, throw some chicken breast on there. Cheese can be a protein too. You don't have to get a meat. It can be a cheese stuff, a vegetarian sandwich. But even something like a McDonald's, if you got a chicken sandwich, there's a lot of places now will have a whole grain bun. So you can ask for the whole grain bun. They'll put lettuce and tomato on there for you. And then instead of getting fries, get the apple slices, or don't get a side, just have the sandwich by itself. So you can kind of get away with creating balance almost anywhere, really. Yeah, good question, though.
Well, you were just saying Subway.
Yeah.
All processed meat except for the chicken breast.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you're on the road and you're just stuck. I don't want you to go to Subway every day, but yeah, if you're stuck and you need an option.
You're not going to die eating one time.
Right. Chipotle might be a little different. Any other questions about kind of creating that balanced diet? Good. So to our spring roll recipe. So I'm going to show you how to make a spring roll. I put a little slide together about why I chose spring rolls for the recipe. They're all fresh ingredients. You're going to see that, so they're really a good way to sneak in a lot of fruits or vegetables. The spring roll we're doing is just vegetables, but a lot of spring roll recipes will have mango in it, or you can kind of put in whatever you want. But it's just really fresh, it's low salt, it's plant-based, so again, really focusing more on the vegetables, not so much protein. They're convenient, so you're gonna see making them is a little intricate and tricky, but once you make them, they could be snacks. This would be a really good lunch if you packed a couple of them to fill you up. It makes good kind of, if you have people coming over and you're entertaining, it makes a good appetizer. But it has the word spring in it, and we're springing into health, so I thought, gotta be spring rolls. So who here has made spring rolls before? Good. Okay, we got one. This was I've eaten them all the time. This was actually the first time I've made them. And so they are rice paper, and they're fresh. They're not deep fried like egg rolls. And so rice paper, depending on where you live, may be tricky to find. The bigger grocery stores definitely have it. Otherwise, you may have to go to like an Asian market to find them. But they come in square or circles, and either one works perfectly fine. So what you do is you take this rice paper, which starts out kind of firm, is you soak it for about 10 to 15 seconds. And from my experience today, you don't want to do longer. You don't want to go, okay, I'll let it soak while I go do this. It gets really soft really fast, and then it rips. And so 10 to 15 seconds kind of gets it pliable, gets it soft enough to wrap the veggies up, but not so soft that it's going to tear or shrivel up on you. So just about 10, 15 seconds. So when you take it out, it's actually still a little pliable, but I can tell in my hands it's softer because this water continues to soak into it, and so it will soften up as you're building it. So we start with lettuce. I just picked green lettuce leaves. You could do any kind of lettuce. You could do spinach or kale. And then other veggies I picked were cabbage. We have red cabbage. That adds like a nice little crunch. I don't know about you, but it's nice to have that little texture change. You don't want, sometimes you get a burrito and it's all soft. This adds a little crunch. So I have some shredded carrots, and we're building it on, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm sticking to having a little bit of a piece that I can wrap over, but about keeping to 1/2. So it's similar to building a burrito, if you've done a burrito or a wrap, like a sandwich wrap. I did some cucumbers for crunch as well. All of these vegetables I chose were low potassium in case anyone's on a low potassium diet. Some red pepper. I have some fresh cilantro. A lot of spring rolls will use basil or mint. So you can use whatever herbs you like. And then you could leave it like that and have it be a vegetarian roll. I chose shrimp, so I've got 3 or 4 depending on the size. They're cooked shrimp. And so you can buy them cooked like that already. You don't have to cook your own shrimp. So this is really more of an assembly recipe. It's not really even a cooking recipe. So it's pretty easy you just kind of pile it all up. Then you're going to take the corner facing you and kind of try to wrap it up and tuck it at the same time, kind of like a burrito or a wrap. And then you can fold in that. So I did it like a triangle if I was looking down and look for a diamond, excuse me. And then you just kind of keep rolling. And that's your spring roll. So these are really fun. We've got a bunch of them that you guys can try. It's really good with a dipping sauce. Or if you want it to be more portable, like if you're going to eat on the run or go to a picnic or something like that, you could spoon the sauce right in there with it and roll it up so that it's not a dipping sauce, but it's right in there with it. So the traditional sauce that usually comes with spring rolls is a combination of like peanut, soy, chili. It's pretty mild. It's more of like a sweeter sauce. And so I already put everything in the blender. You could whisk it. Peanut butter, since it's so dense, is really hard to kind of make it a smooth sauce. without popping it in the blender like a food processor. So if you were just whisking it together, it might stay separated, which is fine, it'll still taste good, but if you want it real smooth and creamy, you'll want to blend it. So I'm just going to re-blend it since it's separated a little bit. That's it. So then we can do some TV magic here and bring out all these prepared fruit rolls. But that was pretty quick and easy. I mean, that was obviously just making one, but if you were going to make a bunch of them, they're really not that time consuming. You just kind of, like I said, you have to keep your eye on the paper. Can't leave it too long. So these are gluten-free, since rice is gluten-free grain. There's no dairy in them. They're kind of easy to work around multiple allergies if you have allergies in your house or intolerances. But they're really pretty, they're really refreshing and light. And so we can do a Q&A while you guys are trying some. If you guys want to come up and bring your plate. Yeah.
I have a question specific to liver transplant.
Yeah.
Everything we were told about seafood, meat, you would never take shrimp like that and put it in there and eat, that it had to be cooked.
It's cooked. It's cooked shrimp.
They were talking about cooking again before you...
Heating it, reheating it.
Okay, so that's not that, right?
Correct. So shrimp is different. The reheating rule is for sliced lunch meats, deli meats. So if you were going to have a Subway sub, you'd have to say, can you put the chicken or the turkey or the ham or whatever in the microwave and heat it? So if it's been sliced, it's a listeria risk, and so those foods you do need to reheat. Stuff like shrimp or tuna or like the imitation crab, stuff like that you don't have to worry about.
Is that just for livers or kidneys?
Everyone, it's the immunosuppression medications that create that risk of listeria, and so that is true of just the sliced meat. Good, I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah. Any other questions?
We do have some questions from the webinar audience, so I'm glad Stephanie came back up because there's a few for both of you. I'll start with you, Stephanie, while Becca is preparing some of that. Let's see here. If you were a post-transplant patient on immunosuppression, do you have any best practices or recommendations for using shared exercise equipment, like going to a gym in terms of...
Yeah, that's a tough one. When I talk to my post-transplant patients when they're about to go out in the world, like they stay at a hotel for about a week after transplant, and some of them want to go and use the gym. I just tell them to make sure that they clean down the equipment. These days, I feel like most gyms have spray bottles and towels, so just make sure that you're cleaning, I would say, all the surfaces, and especially the ones that you're going to touch, and then clean it afterwards. I'll just be nice, but I think it's very important to clean it down.
I don't want to interrupt here. If there's any questions for Stephanie as well. Anyone here? Well, think about it. We got a couple more from the webinar.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
How important is it to have the right shoes for exercising? Or, you know, do you have any...
I thought we always done.
No, I got a couple more for you. Sorry, Stephanie. And do you have any recommendations for, like, types of clothes to wear? Is it better to wear loose-fitting or, like, support clothes or anything like that?
And shoes are important. You don't want to wear, I have patients who come in and they're wearing shoes that they've had for 20 years. Probably not the best supportive shoe, and I can't remember the rule as far as running. Like how often you have to change your shoe.
Oh, it's
like every 100 miles?
And I think it's good to have a good pair of supportive shoes, that you're not taking a walk in what I'm wearing, my boots, but having a good athletic shoe and that it fits right. And there's lots of places around Madison where you can definitely get a good pair of shoes, but they tend to be expensive well. So as far as clothing, I feel like whatever you're comfortable with is fine.
One last question for you then. You mentioned Fitbits earlier, and one of our webinar listeners was wondering if you have any practice with them and how accurate they are when telling you if you are in cardio or fat burning mode when exercising. Do you have any opinions on that?
Unfortunately, I do not have an opinion on the Fitbit. I don't know much about, I'm not sure how much I trust that they tell you when you're, I believe that they tell you if they're in your aerobic mode, but does it tell you for how long in the day or at how many minutes at a time? That's the thing that I would think is more important, that if the Fitbit tells you that you're at least aerobic continuously for 10 minutes at a time, then I think it's a good tracking device.
I have the Apple Watch, and it only counts your aerobic minutes.
But then it's going to give you your aerobic minutes for the whole day, and you could be doing aerobics for 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there, and it's going to add it up at the end of the day. So I'm not really, I'd rather do tracking in my own head as far as, okay, I'm done, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk and not solely rely on your Apple app or your Fitbit. And as far as being in the cardio range or the fat burning range, I don't honestly know where that comes from. Yes, you're burning carbohydrates and fat no matter what exercise you do. You tend to burn more fat in one range over another, but really the most important thing is that you're moving and you're not, I think it's one of the gimmicks that they put on the machines, like make sure you're in this range to be in the fat burning range or in the cardio range. And I really like the talk test guide, and it's a simple guide that anybody can use, and I think the heart rate monitors are great when you know what your heart rate range is supposed to be on pieces of equipment or with your Fitbit, but if you're on medication that affects your heart rate, that's going to be all out of whack. So just using the talk test, I just still like the simplest the best. I didn't really answer the question, I apologize. I really don't know much about the Fitbit. The cardio and fat burn range, I think it's just you should be working at a moderate intensity using the talk test.
Because I work out on a machine at the YMCA as a bike, and it says I burn 130 calories in 30 minutes. But I put it into my fitness pal and it says I burn 320.
Right.
I believe the 130 is correct.
But the 150 minutes a week is what is the important part. Yes, I think it's nice to have those goals like the calories and that sort of thing, but really how accurate is that machine? How did they come up with how many calories you're burning? And it really varies from person to person and from app to app, so just that 150-minute goal.
I think when they were asking a question about like the clothes and the shoes, when I work out, I used to teach spin classes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so when I do that, or I'm lifting weights, or if I'm doing some type of cardio, I prefer compression from the waist, compression pants.
That makes sense.
And the high-waisted compression, because sometimes, because of everything that's going on, I have joint issues, so I feel more supported
when
I'm working
yeah.
on those. And then if I wear high-waisted, I feel like it supports my lower back a little bit.
Okay, that's a good point. I have people come exercise in like business clothes once in a while.
Yeah,
I don't
really,
prefer it,
really
and I appreciate that because I
used to just kind of work out in anything, but I found I got my first pair of compression pants. I'm like, I'll never buy anything.
That makes complete sense with the joints and stuff.
It makes you feel so much better, and I feel like I can work out more and get a little bit more out of my workout without hurting.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience for either one? We do have a couple webinar questions for Rebecca then.
Sure.
Any recommendations about when to eat meals? For example, is it okay to have a big meal at 9 p.m. or is it okay to skip breakfast? Any recommendations there?
Good question. So this is also pretty individualized. It sort of depends on your schedule. So for most of us who are awake during the day, then, you know, it's nice to eat within the first hour that you're awake. And then from there, so that kind of turns on your metabolism. And then from there, if you eat about every 2 to 3 hours, that kind of keeps your intake going, keeps your energy going. It prevents you from overeating at meals if you kind of eat these small, frequent meals. And then for most of us that then go to bed around, let's say 9 to 11 p.m., somewhere in that range, it is kind of nice to stop eating a good 2 hours before you're going to go to bed. That way, if you still have food in your stomach, when you go to lay down, it's not going to kind of come back up and cause that discomfort. Plus, usually 2 hours before bed, we're not really doing much anymore. That's usually when the Netflix is coming on, or we're reading, or using the computer. And so it's a good idea to not eat late unless you're someone whose day is shifted and you wake up later and go to bed later. So the general rule of thumb is eat about 6 times, 5 times, like that breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. And then if dinner's at 5 and you stay up till 10, you may need a snack around 7, especially if you've been active.
We did have someone ask, they wanted clarification on what you just said about Subway earlier. Is it safe enough if they just warm up the meat in the microwave like they do at Subway or whatever that little oven they have?
Not the oven, not like the toasted sub. You want the microwave.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a difference.
One other question from an attendee. Oh, is there one here, out here? Go ahead.
It won't, I guess it won't get it hot enough. You have to put it in the microwave.
For sure. And if that's for fall, Subway sandwiches, like you're just gonna get a Subway kebab.
It's the lunch meat.
Like, you should eat it
Correct.
in the microwave, not have it.
Correct. Yeah.
We had someone ask about certain types of these nutritional health bars that say they're made all out of fruit, like they use the example Lar bars.
Yes.
Is that something they can snack on and count as a fruit serving?
So for those of you who aren't familiar, Lara bars are just usually dates, like 5 dates specifically, blended together with either almonds or cashews or other nuts. Sometimes they'll have maybe another fruit blended in as well. And then they form it into a bar, like it looks like a granola bar or protein bar, but it's mostly fruit. Fruit, you know, especially dried fruit's pretty compact in sugar. It's natural sugar, but it's pretty high in sugar. So I wouldn't do them like 3 times a day. I think once a day would be just fine.
All right.
Yeah.
How many calories is in the spring roll with the sauce?
I don't know that answer offhand. I can email it out to the group. So likely I can look at this. With the sauce you said?
Yeah.
So it's 100 calories for just the wrap. Like 80 calories for the wrap. The veggies don't count. The shrimp is probably another 50 calories, let's say. And then the sauce is, depending on how much sauce you took, is probably 50 calories. It's got peanut butter in it. Yeah. So I would plan on each spring roll with dipping sauce being 200 calories. Yeah. No.
We just had a person who's 1 year post-transplant ask more about, recommendations for staying away from sushi or raw fish. Is that what the post-transplant are?
Yep, exactly. So no raw foods after transplant. With the immunosuppression, it's just a risk of bacteria. And so there are types of sushi that are cooked. So if you want like a sushi roll that's been cooked, like it has cooked shrimp in it, or like a California roll that has crab meat. So as long as you're just not getting anything that's actually raw, like tuna, salmon, that type of stuff.
And the meat has to be cooked at a certain temperature as well?
The shrimp.
Or just like meat, and just like your chicken and your steak?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you still recommending for post-transplant that you stay away from eggs as well, like sunny side up?
Just the raw, exactly. You can have eggs, they just have to be fully cooked. Now, a patient told me recently that there's pasteurized eggs available where he lives in the store, and so if you find pasteurized eggs, so they've gone through a heating process and has killed bacteria, then those eggs you could do sunny side up or poached, or put it in like a Caesar dressing. But if it's just normal eggs, you do have to cook them. Yeah.
Another webinar question, what is your opinion on trendy diets like keto or paleo diets?
Yes. No one here has probably ever heard of keto.
I'm doing it. Trying to.
It's so popular right now. So if you have had a transplant, doing keto or Atkins is not recommended. It's pretty hard on the kidneys. It actually affects your transplant medications are absorbed with protein. So the transplant pharmacists have described it as anytime you kind of dramatically change your diet, especially the protein intake, you're affecting your drug metabolism and your drug absorption. And so if all of a sudden you change your diet and your coordinator's calling you like, hey, your TAC level's weird, it's probably your diet. And so it's not recommended to do fad diets for transplant patients. They're not meant to be forever, and so it's just something that you do temporarily. So then you usually end up with some rebound effects after you get off your diet, and it can be hard to establish a healthy plan after that and kind of yo-yo. So it's really recommended to stick to that plate method and just balance what you're eating and exercise 150 minutes a week so that you can eat a wide variety of foods and it shouldn't affect your weight.
What about the intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so intermittent fasting is usually anywhere from 12 hours to 15 to 18 hours where you're not eating. So it could be from dinner, let's say dinner was 5 p.m. to breakfast at 7 a.m., you know, that's a long time. So most people do already intermittently fast. It's just meant to give your liver a chance to process what you've eaten without storing extra cholesterol and fat. It gets, you know, stuff out of your bloodstream. And so then you have this smaller window where you are eating. If you're only eating from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and not 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 9 p.m., you're shortening your window, and so theoretically you would eat less. Yeah. Some people go from like 5 p.m. to noon the next day, and so that can be really tricky with blood sugar control, medication absorption. I don't recommend doing that.
Last question I have thus far from the webinar audience is with the healthy, the plate, what is it, sorry?
Yeah, plate method.
The plate method.
Yeah.
Fitting beverages into that, or, you know, other than drinking water, is there any recommendations there?
Yeah, so the recommendations are really having water be your main beverage, and then dairy if you're not eating cheese or yogurt or other, you could drink milk and have that be your dairy intake. So 3 servings of dairy a day if you're not on a potassium or phosphorus restriction. So other beverages, you know, there's a lot of debate right now between diet and regular. So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics doesn't feel there's enough evidence at this time to say diet beverages are bad for us. And so we recommend sticking to diet beverages because they're low calorie. So diet soda or like Crystal Light. We recommend infusing water, like if you're someone that likes to drink water but gets bored or you don't like water and you're looking for flavor, is they make water bottles that have a little, it looks like a little strainer on it, and you can put fresh fruit in there and it will make your flavor taste like that fruit. And so you can kind of get creative and put different fruits in there, so like limes or strawberries, lemons, stuff like that. So that makes drinking water more interesting.
What about artificial flavoring, such as like Gatorade or low-calorie power?
Yeah, we don't have good information as far as the nutrition side of things on that. So right now, we're not telling people to stay away from them. Yeah.
What about like, so if you're, you know, you're working out and you do like, you know, protein shrinks, like, you know, protein powder or something like that, is that okay? And if it is there one more better than another? Like I use the vegan one, but.
That is a good question. I'm glad you asked that. This is probably the #1 question I get is, and I should have a slide on it because it's such a popular question. So the question is, what about protein shakes or powders or things like that? And so if we're talking about post-transplant in healthy kidneys, most of us only need about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of healthy weight. So if we're overweight, we calculate on a healthy weight. So for men, that's usually about 50, 60, 70 grams a day. For women, it's only like 35, 50. And so a lot of us kind of overdo protein. You can certainly use protein products. You just want to include it as part of your daily intake. And so if you're one that already eats protein at meals and then you're doing protein shakes on top of it, you just want to be careful not to overdo it. But if you have, you know, let's say your kidneys are great, you're not a kidney patient, you know, the protein recommendations aren't as important. So protein's important in rebuilding muscles, especially as you're exercising. But along with like keto, Atkins, paleo, we just want to make sure people aren't overdoing protein if they have kidney problems. So protein breaks down as creatinine, and they measure kidney function as creatinine. So, good question. Probably the most popular question I get, other than, can I do keto? Anything else you guys can think of? There's more spring rolls. All right, great, thanks.
All right, we have just a couple of closing comments, but they deserve all the applause. So thank you very much for being here today, and for those of you who have joined us online. I really want to thank Becca and Stephanie for sharing their time and expertise with us. We have a couple of slides here I just want to share with you. Our next Living Well before and after transplant sessions here in Madison. On Tuesday, August 13th, we're going to have a session focusing on caregivers and caring before and after transplant. And then on Tuesday, November 5th, we'll be focusing on insurance benefits and open enrollment. So if those are topics that are of interest to you, we'll make sure that we get that information out to you once those sessions are open to register for. We also have, with the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin, they have the Capital City Run Walk on Saturday, July 27th. So Stephanie mentioned all the different runs or walks you can do around town. This one is for organ, tissue, and eye donation, and so it's a really great way to meet some people within that community. And so if you need more information, and really the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin has a great website, a lot of different events going on. So if any of you are pre or post kidney and interested in that, I would definitely check out their website for other events they have. The American Liver Foundation has their Flavors, which is a culinary experience for people who are interested to meet some chefs and have them cook some delicious food and and join people who are going through, similar experiences with liver disease. That is on June 2nd in Milwaukee at the Pfister Hotel. And then the ALF also has the Liver Life Walk in Milwaukee on Saturday, July 20th. So you can go to the ALF website or see Chad in the back of the room for some more information on some of their events and get signed up to be part of their community as well. Thanks again for attending. We really appreciate it if you would fill out those feedback surveys because we try to collect as much information as we can to continually improve these sessions and also get ideas for what you're looking for from other sessions. We did record this session, so if you're interested in hearing it again or sharing it with loved ones, it'll be available on our website at uwhealth.org/livingwell, probably within about a week or so you can look for it there. And thanks again for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, don't be shy if you want another drink.
Yeah.